Hello. I had to pop in today because I've had to utilize my camera differently than I normally do. In this episode today, I'm going to teach you how to utilize the footnotes at the bottom of each page in the LDS edition of the King James Version of the Bible to your best advantage. In 1979 and in 1981, the church produced the first LDS published edition of the King James Version of the Bible. And they had a committee comprising Thomas S. Monson, Boyd K. Packer, and Bruce R. McConkie, plus other scholars such as Robert Matthews and so forth, to organize the Bible with footnotes that would be very helpful for the readers. And the church spent quite a bit of money in a number of people putting together a topical guide at the back of the Bible, a Bible dictionary at the back of the Bible, and for the first time in LDS church history, there was the inclusion of quotations from the Joseph Smith translation of the Bible. You must understand that the Joseph Smith translation of the Bible was owned by the Church of Jesus Christ, the reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, now known as the Community of Christ Church. And until just a couple of years ago, they owned it, and then the LDS Church purchased the Joseph Smith translation. And I'm really excited to see what they do with it. It's kind of a complex set of texts. It's not quite as easy a set of texts as we think it is. It comprises 3 texts of the Old Testament and 2 texts of the New Testament. And the edition that was published the first time by the reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was the edition of what we know as Moses chapter 1 through 8. We use that edition to publish in our scriptures. But that does not reflect other changes Joseph Smith made, and for whatever reason, Joseph Smith III left out those changes, and we're not sure why. But now that we own it, I'm curious to know what we do with some of those changes. Nonetheless, I'm telling you that because those changes are found, many of those big changes are found in the appendix, but a number of them are found in the footnotes. So I want to show you how to utilize these footnotes to your best advantage. Now I have done on the board here a page that represents a kind of typical page you find in either Old or New Testament. And in the top part is the text, what the scriptures, Genesis 50, verse 1, 2, etc., etc. This is the text. In the bottom part, there are footnotes, generally divided into 3 columns. Now, if you study the scriptures electronically, you will not see this. And we like studying sometimes the scriptures electronically, but I would encourage you to study the scriptures in the hard copy so that you can utilize these texts. In the electronic version, those footnotes are there, but you have to open up each footnote to see if it's a note that helps you understand that text or if it's a study note. And I'm going to explain those right now. In these footnotes, there are 2 kinds of notes that this is how I see it. This is what I see. And that's what this whole channel is about, is how I come to understand the Old Testament after 50 years of study. There are 2 kinds of notes. There are text notes and there are study notes. Text notes are designed to help you understand what the text is actually saying, not an interpretation of the text, not what is it teaching, what's it saying. This is 1600 English, and that can be hard to understand, and English has changed in meaning in many words, and we need updates on many of the words, and text notes will help you understand what the text is saying. And there are 4 kinds of text notes. There are notes that start with or, the word or. So you read this phrase, and then the footnote says, or read it this way. The next one is IE. IE is the abbreviation for an example. So IE, you're reading the text and it says, the footnote says IE, then it gives you example. What's that mean? Okay, here's what that is. What is that? Third one, Hebrew or Greek. If it's Old Testament, it'll be Hebrew, sometimes Aramaic, sometimes Greek, but you wouldn't know it was Greek. It's called Septuagint. And I'll have to explain that on another occasion. Septuagint is a great help for biblical Hebrew, can be. The Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, done about 200 years before the time of Christ. Initially, there was, but the whole text is a little complex. But anyway, your footnotes sometimes will say Septuagint. In the Bible dictionary, there is a little article about what Septuagint is. And the Septuagint can be an interesting way to see how Hebrew-speaking people who spoke Greek but knew Hebrew, how they translated that word, if it is the same word, that word in their version of the Bible. Now, that was complicated. Don't worry about it. But Hebrew or Greek. If it's Hebrew, it's Old Testament. If it's Greek, it's going to be New Testament. And it's going to say, look, here's what the Hebrew word means. And so the English word may be actually correct in 1600 English, but the Hebrew word will tell us a little better of what it means. That's the third study note. So ors, IEs, and Hebrews. And the fourth one is critical. Joseph Smith translation changes. These notes are critical in understanding what the text is saying. Study notes are for further study topically about the text. The text is going to have certain topics that it's coming up and talking about, but it might give you a greater understanding or not. But in the footnotes, it might say TG and then gives you a word after that. TG are not telling you what the text says. TG are study notes. I see this misused in the church quite a lot, not the leaders, but members of the church, Sunday school and Priesthood Relief Society. My students would do that. They would misuse. They would say we'd read a verse of scripture and they say, "Oh, that footnote says that this word means that." And I'd have to tell them, what does the footnote actually say? Well, it says this. I go, what does it actually say? Then someone would say, it starts with a TG. TG, topical guide. The word after it is not what the word it is, the footnote is attached to. The TG is not telling you this is what that word means. Don't utilize them that way. That would be wrong. Sometimes the word does not mean at all, or the topic does not mean at all what the word is saying, but the topic is relevant study to that. TG, must note them. And then you find a lot of cross-references. CF is the abbreviation for cross-reference. Cross-reference is this verse that you see right here that's kind of confusing. There's another verse over here just like it. Okay, so maybe it's not supposed to be that, but sometimes it's like that. It is cross-referencing to a verse that has similar things said, and that's always very valuable. These are study notes. They're for study. They're not going to help you understand the text immediately. These four help you understand the text immediately. I hope that makes sense, because when you open up a page, you've got a lot of footnotes down here, and if you're utilizing electronically, you don't know whether any of those notes that you come across are either text notes or study notes. That's why it's helpful, really helpful, to study the Bible utilizing a hardbound text of the LDS edition, so that the study notes can be an advantage to your understanding of the text and understanding areas of possible study. So let me show you how I do this. Now, this is why I had to utilize my camera the way I did. I'm going to take my camera out of my tripod. Uh-oh. And I'm going to... I was scared doing this because I didn't want you to see how bad I'm going to turn the lights out. How terrible my room is, my study. You can see my office is just loaded with books galore, and behind you can see behind I've got books galore that are generally scholarly books, but there's a lot of books that could be helpful for you. I'll tell you about later, but right here I'm going to show you how I utilize when I turn to a page that I've read for the first time, and I had to go look through the Bible. This is my newest edition of the scriptures that I got about a year ago, and that's pretty marked up already, but I did find the page, a very important page actually, Genesis chapter 50, and here is the page. Here is the text. Here are the notes. Now, before I do any reading of the text, in about a 1 minute period, here's what I do. I immediately go down to the bottom of the text and I look at every note, starting in this page with 8a. And I look and, oh, that's a cross-reference. 10a, that is a cross-reference, and B is a cross-reference. 11a, IE. Oh, that's a text note. I want to know that. So what I do is I with a red pencil, I mark that, but I don't do anything yet up in my text. I'm just going through right now and finding all the text notes. 13a, study note, cross-reference. B, cross-reference. C, cross-reference, all study notes. 15a has an or again. So I go down here and I mark or. Go to the next column. 17a, TG, forgive. TG, it's important. This is where people make mistake. They'll say, oh, the footnote says that word means forgive. No, TG, topical guide. This is a study note. B, cross-references. These are both study notes. 18a, study note. 20a, topical guide, evil, study note. B, C, study notes. 21d, topical guide. Again, 22a, topical guide. 23, topical guide. So I can just look at these real quick and see there are no study notes in that second column. Third column, first one, 24a, JST, Genesis 50, 24 through, and that actually says 24 through, I can't even read it, 38. Oh, I go, there's a Joe Smith translation change. That's a text note. I need to know that. 24b is a study note. It's a topical guide. C, topical guide, study note. D, cross-reference. 25G, 25A is a topical guide. Both of these are study notes, and all of these are study notes. So, in just a few seconds, I have noted there's a text note, and a text note right here. So what do? I come over here, I go to verse 11a, and I go up to verse 11, and I find the note A. I don't have my glasses on, so there it is right here. And I mark that so that I understand, that's telling me down here, and I do that. And I'm going to do the same thing for 15 and 22. 22 footnote is a massive addition, verses 24 through 38. It's a massive addition that the Joe Smith translation adds to the very last chapter of Genesis. So important is it? I mean, it's found fully in the appendix, but the appendix is hard for. I really like to. What I do is I actually I type it out, make a copy of it, and then I print it off and actually stick it in my scriptures so that I've got that there. There's a number in Genesis of these kind that are very long. For example, in chapter 17, there is a number that are added to the chapter where Abraham enters into the covenant with the Lord. In chapter 15, at the very end of chapter 14, verse 24, right at the beginning, right before chapter 15, at the very end of chapter 24, when a man named Melchizedek is introduced, there's been 16 verses that are gone and added in the Joe Smith translation. So important, I put them in here, and so that they're right here, so I've got them. And I mark them, and I read this. This is a critical text. And I'm afraid most members of the church don't know what this text is saying. 16 verses that are removed from the Bible. The same is true in chapter 9 of Genesis, which is when the Lord makes the same covenant made with Enoch he makes with Noah. And there are a number of changes to that chapter that I have actually printed out, put in my scriptures, so that I have those changes right there. Now, that's some of what I do in studying the scriptures. And I suggest that you utilize the footnotes to your advantage by discriminating between what are study notes and what are notes designed to help you understand the text immediately. Okay, next episode, Exodus chapters 1 and 2. We're going to go through those chapters paragraph by paragraph. We'll see you then.